Welcome to the Wellbeing and Career Work podcast. I'm delighted to be chatting with leadership coach and a man who has had a 20-year military career where he travelled as an operations and vice presidential communications officer, leading over 500 White House missions. Following the tragedies of September 11, 2001, Darrell was selected as one of 5 key leaders, from 30 senior managers to direct emergency action communication for the Vice President of the United States, to include duties as an Air Force 2 command representative. In addition to being a Master Certified Life Coach, he's a certified facilitator. He trains senior managers at the White House Communications Agency Training Academy to travel as vice presidential team leads, serving as a primary contact for the traveling White House staff, while simultaneously training mid-level managers to travel as presidential operation team leads. He received numerous professional awards to include the Presidential Service Badge, Lacey B. Ivory Service Award, Roy Wilkins Renown Service Award, the National Louis University Reach Award, and the Strayer University Outstanding Alumni Award for his dedicated leadership in the community and Department of Defence. Darrell holds a Bachelor of Science in Management from National Louis University and an MBA from Strayer University. What has this man not done? Where does he ever get time? He's also a member of the White House Communications Agency Hall of Fame. And today I'll be chatting with Darrell about his background. He'll give an insight of what his career was like and what it takes to work in a federal government agency. A very good morning to you, Darrell. How are you doing today?
Hey, good morning, David. All is well here in the United States.
Brilliant. So my first question is always the same question. Don't ask me why. Where are you right now on planet Earth? I know you said United States, but where are you right now?
So right now I am in, I would say, near Fort Meade, Maryland, which is between Baltimore and Annapolis, Maryland.
Oh wow! Okay, is that an area specific to army bases or military bases?
It is. It is.
Oh, okay, interesting. We'll find out more later on. So the other question I have to ask you is, what is the weather like? I know it's early morning where you are. It's 1:00 in Ireland, so I think it's 8:00 in the States at the moment where you are. So how's the weather? Is it wintry?
It is wintry, about 29 degrees today. So it snowed the other day, so no more snow, but the residuals are still there, and definitely chilly this morning.
And that's Fahrenheit, is it? 29 Fahrenheit?
Yes.
Oh dear. Okay. We as you know, we go in Celsius over here.
Right.
That's pretty chilly. Okay, fair enough. Okay, dokie. So generally, I've chatted about your giving into the introduction about your background. So can you tell our listeners a little bit more about your career and your background before we get really into it?
Just been very fortunate, David. Grew up in an area in the United States called Compton, California. At the time that I was growing up there, it's about the 4th most dangerous city in the United States.
Wow.
And it was definitely something different, right? You had a lot of gang activity back then, a lot of drugs, and you're just trying to make it, and even though there was still a lot of positivity in the city, you definitely had a lot of challenges as well. So for me growing up there, I definitely wouldn't change anything because it taught me a lot about mental toughness.
Right.
And definitely gave me the early values that I needed, not just to make it in that environment, but it also set the foundation for me moving forward. I ended up joining the United States military and served in the Army for a career, about 20 years, which was fantastic. Learned a lot of leadership skills and made a lot of great friends. And part of those assignments I did, they call special assignment, where I was assigned to the White House Communications Agency. And we'll talk a bit more about that later. And then from there, I ended up retiring, worked for an organization and taught leadership at a leadership academy, because that's always near and dear to my heart. And then from there, after about 5 years, I worked back for the federal government, where I've been there for about 11 years now.
So pretty impressive. So you've been around the houses, so to speak. Can I ask then, you mentioned there Compton in California, because as an Irishman growing up, I think there was some of the best rap artists were from Compton. And I think there was one, I think it was NWA. Was it Naughty by Nature?
Yes. No, the first one. Yes.
The first one. And I have to say, I loved all the rap, and always remember the association with Compton in a lot of the
Yes.
lyrics. So yeah, so it's a reminiscent time. But is it like that? I know you mentioned there it's. I mean, what the music was telling us, or what the rap artists were kind of portray. Was it like that?
It really was. If people want to kind of get an idea what it was like, definitely two movies I would recommend, not with kids, obviously. And that is the movie Boys in the Hood and Straight Out of Compton.
Okay.
Both of those definitely reflect the time that I grew up. And then Straight Out of Compton kind of reflected the timeline when my brothers and sisters grew up and I had just joined the military. So definitely the music represented the culture.
And did you fear? I mean, because you've done amazing with your life. I mean, did you fear for your life growing up in Compton? I mean, in terms of would you go to school? Would there always be that risk of something happening? I mean, has things changed since then?
They have changed since then, but definitely growing up back then, there were some times where you definitely felt the fear. But what you'll find out is when you grow up in any type of inner city, after a while, there's this I don't know what you want to call it, but this street knowledge that kind of kicks in, and you just kind of know your surroundings. You pay closer attention. You know when to go to certain places and when not to, and it just becomes just a part of that survival instinct. Funny you mentioned when I was growing up at Compton High, right? That was definitely a high school that a lot of people did not like to play us in sports because of the rowdiness
All right.
of our um, fan support, right? And I just remember, man, my junior year, our principal was like, man, we just have too much violence going on. We got to cut this down. And he came up with an idea, talking about thinking outside the box. This is like 1983. And he decided to have play music at lunchtime, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
brought in a DJ, which happened to be a friend of mine, and basically told the kids as long as the violence is at a ceasefire, right? The DJ can keep coming, but as soon as the violence comes back, he's going to take away the music. And it just seemed like David that all the gangsters kind of had like a little truce and said, "Hey, we like this. Let's not mess this up." And I
Right.
just remember my junior year, man, we just had a DJ playing every. I don't know if it was every week, but definitely almost every other week. And it was just a lot of peace during that time, and it was just pretty cool.
It's amazing because I mean, you're an inspiration that you've come from that background to what you've done in your career, and it's an inspiration for other people listening to this story. But was that like more of a drive for you to do what you did?
It was because I didn't know what I wanted to do growing up there. I just knew that there was another world outside of this. I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to represent, my neighborhood and, just kind of let people know that, even though you're may come from surroundings that you didn't choose, it does not mean that you cannot still strive for excellence and still, maximize your potential.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. It really, really is. So let's move on then. Did you always want to work for federal government agencies? And what do we kind of categorize as federal government agencies?
So I never wanted to work for the federal government. Even when I joined the military, I didn't even put the association with that. Uh, and basically, federal government agencies are basically organizations that support uh, kind of like the United States and the people of the United States in different ways. So it's not private industry. That's kind of the best way to look at it. And even like the United States military, I mean, that is considered a federal agency. But I think one of the things that got me about the military, which I liked, was when I talked to the recruiter, he mentioned something about, being a part of something that's bigger than yourself. And I think that's one of the things that drive a lot of people to work for the government. It's not just the stability, but you work for, operations and institutions that are trying to make a difference in the lives of others.
So, couldn't examples of them be like the likes of the FBI, the Secret Service? Is that a specific? Would they be under the umbrella of federal government agencies?
Yes, they can be under the umbrella, and also places such as, the Department of Health, right? Department of Agriculture, right? Any
Yeah.
of those organizations that are trying to, provide a support or a service, for the Americans.
So generally, there's a broad scope then. So if somebody has an interest, there's different areas they can actually work in, which leads me on then to the next question. So what qualifications then would you need for an entry level job within the federal government?
Um, Basically, there's a lot of different requirements based on the career field that you go into, but for the most part, some of the standards are uh, basically you meet the requirements for the particular job announcement. You do not have to have a college degree, but if you have a college degree, it definitely increases your chances. Because, like I said, you can get an entry job without a degree, but obviously, if you have a degree, then you have more opportunities and more chances.
And then is it pretty much as you go through your high school? I think it's what do we call it over here? We call it we don't call it high school over here. What do we call it? Leaving cert or anyway, it's
Okay.
similar to the high school in the States in your
Okay.
teenage years. So is it important then to have continuously good grades? I know you mentioned there with regards to, not 100% necessary to have a college qualification or a degree, but would they monitor that with regards, oh, okay, this kid has been quite high performance all the way through high school. Is that an attractive thing for somebody wanting to employ into the federal government?
Absolutely. I always tell students I was a motivational speaker um, in this area, and I always tell the kids that your performance will always dictate where you're going in life. So obviously, the first time you get to perform is at home, right? So you got to get the home training, master that. But the other place you get to perform well is in school. And I always tell people, school is basically, a backdrop to life, right? You got to learn how to
Yeah.
get along with others. You got to learn how to follow instructions, and you have to excel. And if you're not doing that well, then it's up to you to get the help that you need. So I always give them the example that, if I have to hire, two of you and everything is equal, then I automatically start looking for disqualifiers. And a disqualifier could be a GPA, grade point average, right? If somebody averaged a 4.0 grade point average in school and somebody had a 3.0, right? I would
Yeah.
use that as, okay, I think I will hire this person because for whatever reason, maybe they study harder, maybe they put in extra work, they grasp information a little quicker, whatever it is, those are the things that kind of dictate hiring processes. So I tell them whether it's fair or not fair, the best thing to do is try to master whatever it is that you want to do.
And what about then? So if just say for example, they don't have a high GPA, um, can they boost by doing like extracurricular activities, maybe sports, they're very good at sports, or they do volunteering? Would that be a possibility to kind of make them different from the crowd?
It definitely can, because there's other areas that you look at as it comes to being like a well-rounded person. Because like I also tell the kids, not everybody, right, is going to be a 4.0 student. I wasn't a 4.0 student. But like you just said, I tried to excel in other areas to show that I was well-rounded. Because like you said, being a part of sports, being a part of clubs, right, those things can lend itself to, hey, this person is good working with teams. And I told them a lot of things in the world now. I mean, there's still a lot of jobs where you're individually maybe in a lab, but for the most part, there are a lot of jobs where you work with teams. And if you can show yourself to be a great team player, that definitely makes you marketable.
Can I ask you then, Darrell, just with regards, especially in Europe or maybe parts of Asia, or the Middle East, where they don't have GPA? What is GPA? I mean, are we talking about a lot of subjects that you do, and then there's an average score? Is that how it works?
Yes, exactly. So I'm basically grade point average. And a lot of things are kind of lend itself toward that here in the United States when it comes to education.
And how many subjects do you have to do to obtain a decent score. I mean, is there a minimum amount of stuff like English, maths, French, and so on, or
So,
history?
so it's not a minimum because all the curriculum is pretty much same. It just comes down to whatever those subjects you took. What was your score when it came to graduating, which is basically an accumulative of all the tests and assignments that you've taken.
Right. Okay. Very interesting. So let's move on then to your first job. What was the first job you ever had, and was it
Oh,
important?
so for me, the first job I ever had when I joined the military, I went in as a human resources specialist. However, when I was assigned overseas, they had this thing, David, where it says other duties as assigned. And for me, that meant working in a post office or a postal organization. And in the back of my mind, as I'm going to this place, I'm like, okay, I can work in a post office. I can sell some stamps. But no, 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 no. That was not the case, David. I
Right.
ended up working in they call it the warehouse part of the post office where all the mail comes in,
Oh
all
dear.
the boxes. Oh yes. And I was working on it was two shifts. One of them was 5 in the morning to 12 in the afternoon, and the other shift was 1 in the afternoon to 8 o'clock in the evening. And that was the shift that I was on. So imagine I'm getting to this place, morale is low, motivation is low. And I'm like, man, if I'm going to be here for the next, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, I need to make the best of it. So I just came there with the attitude where I tried to turn the mundane, monotonous task into games. Right. And it was so
Yeah.
funny, David, because I remember some of the older people working there like, quit trying to make this fun. And I'm like, but what's wrong with fun? And it was like, well, just stop it. So then I started, pitching letters, and we're both like, say, sitting next to each other, pitching letters. And it's like, man, I think I can probably pitch all these way faster than you. And then competition starts kicking in because nobody wants a youngster to show them up. So they started, trying to keep me from winning and different things. And I would just do that throughout the warehouse, whether it was offloading a truck, pitching letters, whatever the case. If it was something I can make it a competition, I would do it. Part of it was self-motivation for me, but then I found something out after doing that for a while that it also started motivating the people around me, and that they saw that the environment does not have to dictate my attitude.
Yes.
And that was one of the things I learned at my first job. And I believe that that helped me with my future, because it was like any job that I get after this, I have a pretty good background now of how I want to go into that job. And that's with a positive attitude.
And where were you stationed doing this post office job?
It was in Germany.
Oh
It was
wow.
in Germany. One
And
of
was
my
it
first
cold?
assignments. It was cold during the winter time, but definitely they had all 4 seasons. Although um, it was interesting in Germany at that time because you definitely could get some cold weather in the middle of the summer, which I was not used to. So that was definitely a new environment for me to experience.
I'm going to sidetrack a little bit. So I'll look at your website right now, which is allianceseminars.org, and we're going to
Mm-hmm.
talk about White House communications in a little bit. So I can see some wonderful photographs in front of me. You with President Clinton and
Mm-hmm.
President Bush. Looking at them, what was that like to meet them?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, first of all, it's rare that anybody would meet, right? Their, head of state, right, or premier or king or queen or any of those type of people in those environments. But to be able to join the military, not knowing what that organization was even like, and then find yourself a part of the best. Every day literally was amazing because you're kind of living out a part of history, and to find yourself there, knowing that not everyone would get that opportunity, it was very special.
And are you? I'm looking at the photographs here again. Are you in the Oval Office?
At that time, yes.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty cool. What's the Oval Office like, or can you tell? Can you say what it's like? Is it like?
Pretty
Is it
much what you
pretty?
see on TV. I
Right.
mean, it's kind of just set up as a regular working office. Just happens to be the working office of the head of state for the United States.
And do they? I'm always interested in this, and maybe the listeners are as well. Do do they change the decor depending on the president that comes in? So, for example, President Biden at the moment, would he come in and say, "Look, I don't like the curtains. Let's get rid of them. I want new curtains." Does that work, or is it is what it is, and it's been there for so many years, and we don't touch it
I,
because it's historical?
I believe that it's a little bit of both, right? There are
Right,
some things that they may change a little bit, but for the most part, they do leave a lot of it because one of the things that it's known for is it's the office of the people,
right,
right? So, I don't know if they do it now, but I know at one time, they used to do tours. And if the president was out of the country and you happen to do a tour that week, right, you can get a view. You couldn't go inside, but you can get a view of the Oval Office.
right.
So I think in that regard, they don't change it too much because of the history part of it.
And are the president, obviously don't have to compare them here, but are they quite funny, and do they make you feel kind of calm and relaxed when you meet them? Because I probably find it quite intimidating meeting
Uh,
the world's most powerful person.
oh yes, it definitely can be intimidating, but they all have a part of them that sometimes the public doesn't see, and we were fortunate um, in our environment to be able to see a little bit more of that funny part and that personal part.
Yeah, it's amazing. And are they tall? My final question on this: who is the tallest? Is it President Clinton or President Bush?
Man, both of them actually were very tall, but I believe Clinton was a little bit taller. Like I said, I'm sure the records will show otherwise, but to me, it just seemed like President Clinton seemed a little bit taller.
One more question again. I know I'm jumping from our planned questions, but did you
Mhm.
ever get a shot or see Air Force One? Did you ever get a go on it?
He did.
You did. Oh wow.
I was able to do a tour. Did not fly on it, but definitely did a tour of it. And then I was fortunate that um, we have a lot of different support, and there's support for the vice president as well. So part of the end of my career, I was able to support Vice President Cheney and actually flew on Air Force Two for a couple of years. So even though it's not as big as Air Force One, it was still a exciting experience.
Yeah, geez, that's so cool. Amazing life and career you've had. Okay, so that's my questions out of the way that I've sidetracked. But anyway,
No
so
problem.
it's just so interesting. So what about then the White House Communication Agency? What is that?
Basically, it's just an organization that provides information technology support to president, vice president, Secret Service, White House staff, and others as directed, and basically allows uh, those leaders, particularly the president, to talk anywhere to anyone at any time.
Right. So the technology has to be good, is it? Is this what we're dealing with?
Yes.
Right. And is the federal government jobs, is that part of that umbrella as well to work within the
Uh,
agency?
yes, it would be categorized as actually it's interesting because it's actually a military special assignment. So it actually falls underneath the Department of Defense, which is another agency.
Right. Okay. So confusing because so many agencies, but
Yes,
still
it is.
fascinating. Yeah, it's amazing. So what about then? What was the most challenging travel mission you ever had, and why?
So when you're supporting the president, every trip, every mission is different, right? Nothing is always the same. The particulars, the team, and the challenges. So I would always tell anybody my biggest challenging trip was definitely when President Clinton celebrated the 50th anniversary of D-Day in Normandy, France.
Okay.
And that was such a challenging trip. One, because he was on the ground for a couple of days. So each event, right, it's already something special. And then when you start adding days to it or spends a night, it makes it even more challenging. So it was just the fact that we had so many moving pieces. And at that time, I traveled as kind of like an operations lead. So there's a communication officer that's in charge of the whole team. But
Right.
then there's an operations lead that kind of takes care of all the logistics, right? And just being able to capture all the people. I mean, working with the team leads, of course, but you still have that role of making sure everybody gets to where they need to get to. All the vehicles are set up, and you set up contingency plans and things of that nature. And it was just one of those trips where it just took so much out of you, but yet it was so rewarding because, again, you're part of history.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I mean, you mentioned the vehicles there. I mean, we do see them on TV. I think the nickname of the presidential vehicle is called the Beast. I don't know if I'm right or wrong there, but I think that's what the media are calling it. So generally, you have to make sure that all of these support vehicles are where they should be. And is that how it works?
Well, only the vehicles that we deal with, like, somebody else does that part with him, but within ourselves, like, it's so funny when people see on TV the president showing up, they don't see that, prior to that, right?
Yeah.
You have some outstanding joint service military men and women that are great at what they do and what they specialize in. So they're setting up all of the IT equipment to allow that particular trip to take place. So the vehicles that I was referring to were the vehicles that we use to get that equipment right to those different locations,
right,
to make sure that everything works the way it needs to and people can communicate accordingly. And again, some of those, it's a lot of equipment. So it takes a lot of vehicles, right, and a lot of coordination. One, to get the equipment there and set it up, and then two, to get it torn down. And then sometimes you may have to leapfrog to different events to make sure that we can recover everything in a timely manner.
And how often in advance, or how much time in advance, Darrell, would you have to prepare for, say, these events? I mean, are you talking, is a last minute event a nightmare because the preparation involved might be more high pressure?
That is exactly correct. Normally, if there's big events throughout the year, those things are kind of out there, but there are more times where, you may get noticed, not as much leeway time. And then the ones that you talked about, those we call down and dirty trips,
yeah,
that's when you make your money, right? Because the timeline is out the window. Right, he's going to be there at a certain time, and you still have to make sure everything is working. And that was definitely one of those things that I took pride in. Whenever I had, they call it down and dirty trip. You dread it at first because you don't know what you're getting into, but once you're in the middle of it, you have so much pride because you know that you're going to lead these great team of men and women that's going to be a part of history and make something happen in the amount of time that most people would not be able to do. And that just gives you a special pride.
And what about then? I mean, you mentioned there, like it's it can be quite challenging. So, what about how did you support a mission where failure, can be seen all over the world?
Man, you have to support it very carefully, right? Because, like you said, we're out there, the media sees what's going on. And that was one of the things that I took pride in as being a lead, is you work with the people and you realize that you can't do anything without the team. So one thing I learned early on was I wanted to make sure that I always motivated my team, always knew what my team was dealing with, knowing their strengths and maybe some of the things that they may need to work on, and just helping them to be the best that they could for that week or those 2 weeks. And then doing a lot of what we call contingency training, right? Like if you're the radio lead, David, and you're setting up things, all right, we're talking different scenarios. Hey, David, what would happen if this goes out?
Yeah.
Right? What's our backup to that? Okay, good. And what if over here happens? How would we take this over there? And being able to talk out those scenarios allows those leaders to be able to, in the back of their mind, plus trusting their training, to be able to adjust on the fly should something go awry.
I mean, it seems quite stressful and quite tense at times. I mean, what about them with regards to family? family life and friends. I mean, because you're traveling quite a lot, when you do these kind of setups in different countries, I mean, is it radio silence for maybe a few weeks that you can't contact them because of certain protocols or security? I mean, how then from the family side of it, how does that work? And especially for you as well, because although you're away, you're still dealing with your family, if you can understand me.
Right. So depending on the trip, like you said, there are some of those trips where you just say, hey, I'm about to leave, can't tell you where I'm going, but, I'll get back with you. And then there are some trips where it was like, okay, it's like, hey, once the security piece of it is, once the media releases it, then it's okay to talk about it. Right.
Yeah.
So, so when you're in those type of places and you say, yep, we're over here in Spain, all right, Madrid, that part is good. But I can tell you that being away from family, that is definitely one of the most difficult things for, especially anybody that serves in the foreign government or definitely serves in the military, particularly because a lot of times when you're away from family, it's not planned times. So you're missing, right, significant events. Right. Birth of children, anniversaries, birthdays, birth of the children. A lot of times you can put in, vacation time and be there for that. But then, shortly after that, depending on what's going on, then you have to get right back into the swing of things. So definitely traveling a lot. That is probably one of the biggest things that stands in the way of people doing this type of job for a long period of time.
Is it best then, before you get into this type of organization, and you meet somebody and you need to, is it best to explain to them, look, this is my job, I will be away a lot, you need to understand, because when you hear a lot of these stories where people get involved with individuals that are working in these organizations, or whether it be in aviation or industries that are away a lot, and they get married or they hook up with somebody in terms of in a relationship, and then after that, then a couple of years later, they get upset, or one side get upset because they're not seeing the other person. I mean, is it good then to have a bit of a conversation before you meet somebody, or is that a bit too over the top and drastic?
No, I think depending on where you see the relationship going, I think it's very important to have that discussion because, again, whether you're in the military or, again, as you mentioned, airline pilots, right? If the relationship is going somewhere and you're starting to have feelings for both parties and it's getting a little bit deeper than friendship, you definitely have to have that discussion because they have to understand that, if you're going to be a part of my world, this is a part of it. Right. And as of right now, my career is a little bit more important than relationships. So if you're okay with that, that's fine. But if not, I totally understand. No hard feelings because not everyone can support, right, a person that has a traveling type of mission.
Yeah.
However, I would say that for those people that have those discussions and the person that they're dating says, you know what, my mother or my father had that type of job. So I'm used to that. I know what it takes. Or they may have someone that never the part of it, but yet they're willing to make the sacrifices and they have an understanding and they're independent. Those relationships tend to be some of the best because they've already building a mechanism of sacrifice that's going to be required. And if you can get through that type of phase, then you realize that anything after that is going to be a piece of cake.
Great advice, and it's. I mean, I'm from an aviation background myself, and I can relate to that because you are. Well, me personally, I was away quite a lot, and you do need to have an understanding partner or wife or husband or whoever. So it's
Yes.
it's a good suggestion. One quick question: vacation. Did you ever have a time where you had planned a vacation, you were all set to go, and then it had to be cancelled because of your work?
Absolutely.
Oh dear.
Luckily, it wasn't the type of vacation where money was spent, right? It was just maybe just a local one.
Yeah.
And that, because most of the time, that's just what's so good about these type of jobs. Again, if you put in your vacation time, because they know that everybody needs to wind down and type of environments like this. And they encourage it as well. They're like, hey, make sure you put in your leave so we can not mess with you during this time. But there were after a few times we had local vacation, and then they would call and say, hey, normally we wouldn't call you. We know you're on leave next week, but everybody else is out because of a certain amount of trips came up that were unexpected. And then in those situations, right, I would talk to my wife and, say, hey, this came up. I know we were supposed to go this week. Is there any way we can push it back? And if we can push it back, we did it. I would do the trip and then I would come back. Because again, and when it all comes down to it, you're a public servant. And part of being a public servant, especially in the military, is, duty, honor, country. And that's kind of goes with that particular job.
So a lot of flexibility needed.
Yes, much flexibility.
I want to say hello to your wife, Veronica. Hi, Veronica, just so we move on.
I'll definitely let her know.
So what do you suggest then to anyone wanting to work? I mean, we've kind of put some positives on it because you've had such a fabulous career, but there's kind of a little bit of challenges because you need to be aware that you might be away from family, friends, yes, especially for important events. So what would you suggest to anyone wanting to work then that, they're in the high operations tempo environment? What do they need?
So one of the first things that I would share with anyone is do your research, right? You need to understand what you're getting into, because every job comes with a certain amount of risk, a certain amount of challenges, but you have to ask yourself, am I willing, right, to put myself in this situation? And then the second thing I always tell anybody, especially when I'm talking to kids, is it's very important to find a mentor. Right? If you know that you want to get into the aviation industry and there's no one in your family that's a part of that, still reach out and find someone that's already doing that particular career. Find a way to find an internship, things of that nature, because having a mentor can dramatically increase the learning period, as well as you get to learn firsthand, right, some tips of the trade that have allowed them to, one, manage a successful career and also have proper balance within their families.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think I can fully support that. A mentor and internship is before you either invest money into something or invest your time into it, it's good to have an insight before you jump in with both feet, rather than regretting it. that's one of the biggest issues. So what about them? What's your favorite part of the job? The least favorite part, or do you have any?
Well, I would say the least favorite part is definitely the friendships that you make. And then after that, knowing that, those people have to leave because, no type of assignments, nobody stays there forever. So just to build these friendships that are, you find out you're more than friends. You're almost like, these people are like your brothers and your sisters.
Yes.
Right. So when their time to leave comes, it's definitely disheartening because you built up so much, you shared so much, right? You've done things together, you brought families together, right? You were at each other's house for Thanksgiving or Christmas, and like this is that last time that you're going to come together. So those are definitely the least favorite parts because, you just met somebody that's now a part of your extended family is what we call them.
Yes.
And definitely my favorite part, without a doubt, is like you were saying, going to those short notice trips and having a team that's, you always have doubt, like, okay, how are we going to do this? What is it going to look like when we get there? And to be able to jump into those environments, not really knowing what the game plan is, and you're kind of making it up on the fly, and to be able to, when you see Air Force One or Air Force Two depart, and you realize, holy smokes, I can't believe we pulled this off.
Yes.
That is a feeling that is hard to explain because of all the sweat and, that you put into it. In your mind, people don't realize, like you said, those are stressful times. So in the midst of you setting this up, it's not like the equipment works the first time all the time, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing about technology, right? It always will test your patience. So, I mean, I remember a couple of times where, the principal, whether it's the president or vice president, was getting ready to come, and you're at the airport and you're trying to set up certain things and it's just not working the way that you planned it. And you're like, okay, what's option one, what's option two, and option three, because this is definitely not going to be fixed by the time he gets there. And the pressure builds up.
Is it exciting then? We see some movies out there and we're fascinated by a lot of these Air Force military movies, White House movies, presidential movies. And one of the ones I always love watching is the one with Gerard Butler, is Olympus Has Fallen. And you mentioned in regards to the excitement of working within this environment or industry. I mean, is it like the movies, or is it movies are just making it more so exciting that we jump onto that? I mean, is it like fast paced like that?
The fast pace is definitely there, without a doubt. That fast pace is up because people have to realize this is one of the few jobs where you can't say, you know what, David, we're just not having a good day today. The equipment's not working. Hey, can you call the vice president or the president and tell them to postpone? I mean, it's like you are under the wire to get this thing done. And there is no, as we always call it, it's a no-fail mission. It's like he's like one of our mentors always tell us, hey, he's coming whether you're ready or not. So you might as well be ready.
It's great to hear that, because I mean, we as Europeans, or myself as an Irishman, is that I grew up in a lot of these movies, and it does inspire you. You watch like Top Gun, and then I'm so disappointed because Maverick has been delayed twice coming out.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah, so it's supposed to be out in 2020, and it's supposed to be out next year now, or sorry, this year, because it's 2022. And but all these movies, I mean, they're so inspiring, and it's nice to hear that there is a bit of excitement in the job that's similar to that. So if Tom Cruise, if you're listening, please bring out Maverick as soon as possible. So what is one of your fondest memories that stands out? So what other than, I mean, you've obviously met a couple of presidents, vice president, and what would be your fondest?
I'll tell you, the fondest memories I have two. One is personal and then non-personal.
Okay.
The non-personal fondest memories, which I love this, was when we used to travel, David. If we were going to a particular city and that was like your hometown, as long as it wasn't too complicated or too busy, people were able to invite their family members, because a lot of times, especially if it's a public event, if the president was coming to a particular airport or the vice president, right, you can invite your family and come to the arrival.
Right. Oh, wow. Okay.
So that was really special. So for me, as a leader of these teams, especially on the VP side, one thing that I would do is, regardless of where that person was working, I would find a way to make sure that they were working at the airport when their family was there being greeted.
That's
or
cool.
if they were going to meet them like on departure. But normally you try to do it on arrival, because at departure, you never know if he's going to be able to shake everybody's hand. But if you know that it's a place where he's definitely going to shake hands,
yes,
being able to put not just their family members, but then I would find a way to get that person there so they can be there too. So then that way the parents can be like, oh my gosh, David really works for the vice president. David really supports the president. And then they see David there and they get a chance to either, shake his hand. And some of them were fortunate enough, the photographer would take a picture, and then we would find that picture and, get it to the family or to that individual on the trip. And just, the memory of that. It's one thing to say I work for the president or vice president, and it's another whole thing to be in a situation where your family gets to experience it, even if it's just that one time.
Yes.
It was just amazing for those individuals to come back to you, David, and say, hey, I know you didn't have to do that. I really can't thank you enough for putting my family in that situation, even allowing me to be there. I mean, that's just a great feeling. And that's when you realize, that's what I love about working for, something bigger than yourself. Right. I could be selfish and always try to put myself there and take all the pictures all the time. But that's not rewarding. What's rewarding is putting the people who put in the work and allowing them to be recognized.
Well, it must make you feel so good. I mean, you've gone beyond the call of duty to do this. You don't have to do this, but you actually do it, and it's a very nice thing and admirable thing for you to do. Because I think in today's world, not many people will do that. So well done to you. One question before we skip on to our 30-second
Mhm.
quiz, and as I mentioned before, no cheating. The Did you ever meet President Obama?
So I did not. I retired while President Bush was in office. And then when the new administration came, that's when I was working at called the Leadership Academy. And I
Yes.
was teaching the job that I did, supporting president and vice president. We were actually teaching that at the Leadership Academy. So the great thing that I take pleasure in is the people that I trained, they supported President Obama and President Biden and Vice President
Wow.
Biden. And for me, it was great to when they would come back and they come through the academy like, hey, I just did my first trip or I just did my evaluation trip. I'm like, hey, how was it? And they would say things like, it was everything you said, even the little tricks of the trade that you told us that, weren't really in the books or in the manuals that we had, but just some of those things that you just learn over, a period of time. It's like I was able to use some of those tricks. And I remember one person told me that because I always told them, if the office opens up at 8, you get there at 7, right? Never
Right.
get there right at 8 because you want to be there just in case somebody has an emergency, just in case somebody needs something, right? And you always want to be at your best and at the ready. And never forget, one of the people told me that they were in the office and they got there early, and President Obama had came from jogging and was on the floor and went to, just say hi to the people that were supporting him. And the person told me that, the president asked them, what were their names, what part of the job were they doing and all of that. And they took a picture with them and all that good stuff. And for them to come back and say, had you not told me to show up early, I would have missed an opportunity to have a photo op with the president.
But he
And
seems so cool, President Obama. I mean, when you watch him on the TV, I mean, yeah, I have the stereotype. I look at President Bush Jr. and he seems kind of fun to me. And then I look at President Clinton, he seems very charismatic. And you look at President Obama, and he seems kind of like cool, and he's with it, and he's kind of it just seems that kind of open type of person. So no, it's just fascinating to know that it's that's pretty cool though, isn't it?
it was awesome. And again, once you're a part of something that's bigger than yourself, I tell leaders this all the time when I do leadership training. Um, Regardless of how you think you felt when you were recognized, the feeling is 100 times better when somebody that you lead gets recognized.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's it's well, fair play to you again. I mean, you're obviously inspiring these guys and girls, and they're progressing through their careers and their lives. So it's pretty amazing. Okay, now we're going to go on to the 30-second quiz of
Okay.
the White House. Now we asked you about this before we started recording, and you promised me no cheating. So you
I
promise
did
no cheating?
not. Oh, you trust me. You'll know by my answer that is definitely the case.
I'll say so. Educational purposes, I'm putting Darrell on the spot right now. So I'm going to ask him 4 questions within 30 seconds, and he without a doubt, he's going to know the answers because I had to Google these answers. So,
I
okay,
did not
Darrell.
Google them, so
Oh no, you didn't. No, don't tell.
I
Don't
did
tell
not.
anybody that. Tell nobody. So the first question is going to start the clock right now. So, what street is the White House on?
So the White House is actually on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Correct. Cool. How many presidents or American presidents have lived in the White House?
I would say 20.
Gonna go more? According to Google, I think it's more.
It
Oh,
could be.
we'll
It
skip that
definitely
one.
could
We'll
be.
move on. How many rooms are in the White House?
Oh my gosh. I would think
According to
it's,
Google. According to Google.
oh man, I would say at least 180.
Well, a little bit lower. According to Google, you could be right. They might have done some like construction work recently, or knocked through a few walls. But according to Google, it's 132 rooms. But that might be
Oh
just
wow.
bedrooms. I don't know really. And then what is the name of the president's plane? We know
That
this.
one, I believe, is Air Force One because I saw the movie.
The movie was amazing. Harrison Ford. Well done.
Yes.
You've passed. You did that in 27 seconds. Well done. If anybody has any corrections to make on my answers, please email me. Okay, Darrell, so before we go, you're a master certified life coach. So it's a pretty tough time for most people around the world, during the pandemic, and they've lost their jobs and they probably feel a little bit lost at the moment. What advice can you give someone who might be finding it difficult?
No, I love this question, David. And I would share two things with everyone. First, I would say that you need to find a way to maximize your call. I always tell everybody's on this earth for a reason, whether you figure it out right away or later on, that there is something inside everybody that this world needs. And it's important for us to figure out what that is and then maximize that calling. Like you said, you're in aviation, right? It's important for you, not that once you get to the aviation and like I've made it, right? Then your calling should change to the point now, David. It's like, now how do you impact the lives of others that are in aviation or those who want to come behind you, right? That's how we make the world a little bit better. And I know sometimes people say, well, it's so big. It's like, well, don't try to take care of everything. Just be an influencer within your circle of influence, right? So maximizing your call, anybody that's in difficult situations. And that part of that could be, again, finding a mentor, right? Stopping long enough, right, to stop chasing money or prestige or titles and just reflect on where you are. And again, how can you help those around you and then enjoy your life, right? I've talked to a lot of leaders where they were saying they were chasing, the ladder up the ladder so much that they felt like they were missing time with their family. So it's like, hey, you can control that, right? Try to just pause. I know you can't just stop and things like that, but definitely put in those mechanisms, right, that can just help check you when you get a little bit too far to the right and bring you back to be centered. And then another thing I tell people too is, if you're having a tough time, try to get an accountability partner, right? Somebody that's not David friend because he's in aviation, but he's David friend because he cares about David.
Yeah.
An accountability partner can be very helpful in your life. They can bring you down when you're a little bit too high. They can bring you up when you're a little bit too low. And that's the other thing I would share with somebody is, know that you have the opportunity to set the conditions for success. And what I mean by that, David, is some of us are not dealt, right, the best hand in life. It's just a fact, right?
Yeah.
However, after you get that hand, you get to choose which cards you're going to play. And then later on in life, which cards are you going to swap out for something a little bit better?
Yes.
Right? Every situation that you go into, don't look at it as, what did I do to deserve this? But try to ask yourself another question of, what can I learn from this? And not if, but when I get through it, what lessons can I share with somebody else that may be on a similar path? Because that's when you're going to find out that, what, that challenge that I went to, I thought it was all about me and making the wrong choices. And I did something bad and karma was coming back. And then you realize that really those situations were growing opportunities for me to either learn a little bit more about myself, learn a little bit more about my accountability partner or my network, and to realize that I'm not in this by myself.
That's great advice. No, it's especially now, because we've heard about this great resignation, people leaving their jobs, especially maybe because some of the employers that they had kind of let them go after so many years because of business was reduced. And I think people now have seen a different light, that they want to be happy. But I think it's important, as you've mentioned correctly, it's kind of focus on the things that are important to you and make you happy in one's life. So what about then? So I'm looking at your website here, allianceseminars.org. So firstly, Darrell, what services do you provide and how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so basically, definitely have the website, allianceseminars.org, and on Facebook, we're Alliance Seminars Coaching. And basically, you really kind of hit it already. A lot of the things that I've experienced in my life, I just felt like there is no way that, right, I was meant to leave Compton and have the life that I have working at the White House all those years and just keep it to myself. So my wife and I started Alliance Seminars Coaching, which is basically a veteran-owned, faith-based organization that provides clients with coaching services, keynote speaking, and certified workshops, right? Because basically our mission is just to support clients by sharing strategies and skills that strengthen personal and professional relationships. And that's one thing I found, regardless of what industry you're in, regardless of where you are in your life, your success is definitely going to be tied to how well you manage personal and professional relationships.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that, and you've done it. I mean, as you mentioned there, you've come from Compton. I've never been there myself, so I can't 100% say how tough it was, but
Mhm.
I'm sure it was, and you've done fantastic. And I said, keep looking at your pictures here. It's just fascinating to see if you've met vice presidents and presidents and other amazing people, and that's just all through dedication, hard work. As Darrell has mentioned, his website allianceseminars.org. I'll put in all the links when the podcast is released of how you can get in touch with Darrell. So all that's left me to say is, Mr. Darrell Williams, thank you so much for your inspirational story today, and I'm sure the listeners to this will get great motivation. Thanks so much, Darrell.
Thank you for having me.